Hey everybody, and welcome to Lost in the Groove. Today we have an interview with Elizabeth. She's an artist, creator, and an extraordinaire, and has an incredible story to share with us. So without further ado, Elizabeth, welcome to Lost in the Groove. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Who is Elizabeth?
Well, I was adopted at 2 weeks old from Quincy. I was born in Quincy, Illinois, and my parents were from Brooklyn, New York. My dad, taught in Harlem, and my mom did a lot of editing work and stuff like that. And then my dad got a job at the University of Maine, and so we moved up to the Bangor area when I was, very little, and I pretty much grew up there. And I had a great childhood. I mean, they had a messy divorce, but I was never exposed to abuse or violence or, anything, toxic like that, or drugs or anything. Like, I always had, a lot of support, and, I was just really blessed. It wasn't until my 20s, I dated a really abusive man, and he assaulted me, to the point my skull was showing. And when I went to the hospital, they pumped me full of opiates. But when, after I found out I was pregnant that day, and, they sent me to the pain clinic after the initial injury because my blood pressure was still skyrocketing. I was, having, excruciating pain at this point. I also started having seizures, as a result, of the brain damage. I go deaf and blind for moments at a time. And so when I was at the pain clinic, I was like, they were giving me an opioid, and I was like, I don't want to take this regularly because, I don't want to get addicted. I don't want my baby to get addicted. Like, I just don't want to go down that road. And, I feel that, after I got off on my parents' insurance, I was on state insurance, and they started treating me differently, I noticed. And, they basically threatened me with child protective services if, I refused to take, the medication, because they said, my blood pressure was skyrocketing, that, and I'm just sitting there like, are you kidding me? Like, they're like, don't worry, you're on too small of a dose to get addicted. And, here we are 16, 17 years later, and, half the country, we have this horrible epidemic of opioids and, addiction in this country, higher
And
than anywhere.
you know who started all of this?
Big Pharma.
No, Lyndon B. Johnson.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that. I knew the pharmacy companies were,
This has been
lobbying
going,
politicians.
yeah, but honey, it's been going on for fucking 50, 60 years to the
Right.
point now where
Let's make
they,
everybody sick so we can profit off of
ex-
them. Yeah,
exactly. And
because
when
the rehabs have a 94% failure rate, and then they like to kick people out over petty reasons, and then it's $30,000 no refund. And then they just fill that bed. It's free money to them, and they are profiting off of the suffering of the American people.
well, the thing that baffles me the most more than anything is the war on drugs. Because the war on drugs is the most disgusting thing that has ever existed in humanity. Because here you have plants and herbs, psilocybin, mescaline, MDMA, all of these
Yeah.
things that have been a part of cultures for thousands of years. And some fat ass says, no, I don't like black people. Fuck the black people.
Right.
Fuck the
Like
Latins. Yeah, fuck
hippies.
all. Throw them in prison. Fuck them. I don't care about them. Who are you? Who are you to tell people they can't do this shit? And so many
Yeah.
people have been incarcerated in prison because they're cannabis and because they're black.
We make up 25% of the global incarceration rate, like, on the planet, and we're only 5% of, the planet's population. We have more people in prison than entire continents, and it's all for profit. A hospital saves $350,000 a year contracting their linen to be washed by inmates instead of paying regular Americans, a minimum wage. Not even a living wage, a minimum wage. These corporations don't even want to pay us, a minimum wage. They would rather bypass slavery laws and have mass incarceration. And now we have more prisons than we do colleges. and they're making so much money off of this. And it was fun. It's kind of funny you said that. Um, yeah,
I'm a hippie, honey. What do you expect?
that's great. That made me laugh. I love that. See, most people, like, when I tell them this stuff, they're like completely baffled. And you were like, oh no, I already knew this. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
At least somebody is like awakened to the point. Like, I had to go to prison and see this shit. Like, and it baffles me so much because 70% of women in prison have some sort of domestic violence or sexual assault in their background. Like, we are the women who slip through society's cracks. And that's what happened to me. I went to the battered women's shelter eventually after this man, tortured me in my own bathroom, for to the point where I was begging him to kill me. Like, he crushed my vocal cords, choking me. My throat, I would have these fits where my windpipe would collapse in on each other from the damage he did. And I would have to chug water just to be able to breathe. Like, this went on for about a year. And, I went to the Spruce Run, the battered women's shelter in Bangor, and they literally told me, well, after speaking with police, your injuries are so extensive, and this is so dangerous, it puts the other women in the shelter in danger, so sorry, we can't help you. The girl that got the bed didn't even get hit. The guy kicked her car. And yes, that is domestic violence, destruction of property, whatever. But in comparison to my story, where if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I would have died, you're not helping real, victims. Like, you're gonna let somebody get killed. Like, these are the situations where women die.
Here's the deal. These organizations that are a part of our government, they make so much money. And how do they make all this money? Is allowing these beds to constantly be on roll. If they have somebody that has to be in there for long terms of care, it's not profitable for them.
Right.
Isn't that sick?
Oh yeah, and this is a problem with the victim shelters. My friend was a victim of sex trafficking, and she was trying to get in, the human trafficking shelter. They said the only way they would take her in was if she snitched her pimp out and testified against him and got them a collar. So you're extorting victims' safety, so they do law enforcement's job for them. This isn't right. Like, these pimps have these girls' IDs. They have their, social security cards. They know where their mom lives, their kid lives, everything. They dot their I's and cross their T's with, terrorizing these women.
And it's crazier when you realize this all could be solved if the sex industry wasn't illegal.
Exactly.
And it sounds crazy, but here's the thing. Look, I'm not
There's a huge demand for it. There will always be a demand for it. They will demonize the product and say these girls are dirty whores and, this, that, the third. Well, they wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't such a high demand for it. So, I had Republican women tell me when I got out of prison, if you don't want to get raped by cops, then you shouldn't go to prison. Don't break the law. Just say you're okay with cops being predators. And it's like, this is the problem with this rape culture in America. Once a woman has been to prison, once a woman has, been extorted in the sex industry or been a stripper or anything, just trying to survive these men and this horrible dystopian nightmare we're living in, then all of a sudden, she's demonized and her word doesn't matter. And it's okay, whatever abuse she goes through.
Right.
This is not what America should stand for.
And the craziest part is people look at, like, I'm going to use strippers as an example, as, the dirty corner. But here's the thing. Some strippers will dance better than most fucking girls in the room. They can get on a pole for a fucking hour.
Entertainers. Like, those girls
They're
work
entertainers.
Like,
exactly.
they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're not just some petty thing in a dirty club. They're performers.
Yeah, they are performers.
And this is what I try to believe in, is that open quality and open society. You don't have to accept and agree with people's opinions and decisions, but you need to be able to talk about them, because here's the thing. One opinion doesn't work for every single person.
Right.
You can't force that on mass amounts. It just doesn't work.
No. And yeah, and people don't understand that in a lot of situations these girls get extorted and trafficked in these situations. They're very young when it happens, and then before they know it, like there's a reason why dead porn stars go viral. that's a motive to create more dead porn stars. It's not the porn star getting paid, it's the agents and the porn companies that are, cashing in on the royalties. Porn stars don't even get royalties. They're extorted in life and even more in death. And it's a motive to kill them. And I think that industry really needs to be cracked down on, because I have friends who are no longer here from it. And that, like you said, like in jail, like it's a lot of racial, oppressive, ladders. And I growing up in Maine, where there was 94% white people, I wasn't exposed to this. I learned about the civil rights movement and everything, and then after, I was under the influence that it was all over and America's good now, and all that. Like, they took us to the Underground Railroads all through Maine, and that's what I grew up thinking, that it was all over. But that's what
Right.
the illusion of white supremacy wants you to think. It wasn't until I went to prison and met a handful of women that had been sterilized against their will by the prisons. And this was before Trump filled up the ICE camps with the refugee women. And you heard about the refugee women getting sterilized. Well, they were doing this to American women before that. And, one thing I noticed, at some point, not a single one of them were white. And now all of a sudden, it's a great day for white lives with the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
It's all about shifting and
Control
showing
and
exactly. Think about it now with prisons. How now women prisons are now filled with men because now they're identifying as women, and it,
I will be the first to say that trans people get treated horribly in prison. They get
yeah, they
treated
do. They do
horribly in prison, and that
horribly.
needs to be addressed. But they should not put them in with cisgender women. They should have their own pod, so they are safe, and so women are safe when people want to hijack this movement and say, "Oh, I'm trans," when you're really just a rapist, and you want to hijack a movement so you can do some horrible stuff to some women
Well,
and
you know
make
what?
a whole group of people look bad.
I kind of like think back in a way. Maybe this is a way of them making more money. There has to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
there has to be a motive behind this. Why are they pushing this agenda?
Well, listen, over the pandemic, all these prisons across America were taking out PPP loans to expand their prisons and to add on to their wings. And now all of a sudden there's 29 empty properties for every homeless man, woman, and child in America. That number was 3 before the pandemic, which was bad enough. The homeless problem is horrible. And now they're criminalizing homelessness in a lot of cities. You can't even feed a homeless person without getting fined. So what are they going to do? They're going to round all these people up and criminalize them and put them in jail and put them to work for pennies a day. This is what their plan is. They would rather have us all in jail than give us housing, give us, medical care, give us all these things. And these landlords up in Maine, the housing problem was just exploding overnight, and they couldn't figure out why. And, as a felon, it was very hard for me to get a place to live, even though I've done so much good in the community since I've been out. It's still impossible for me to get a place to live. And this new scheme that landlords have with these application fees, where they chart, well, they'll have 10 application fees in a week, and not even rent the apartment. They're getting 3 times the rent, by doing this, or more, and they don't have to turn anything on. And this is their scam, and it's driving the homeless problem up. So I went to the legislatures about this, and they passed a bill, the Tenant Bill of Rights, saying you can't charge an application fee unless if a lease is signed. Like, you go look on some of these websites and you see 78 people have viewed this apartment or house or whatever, or this listing, and you couldn't find a single tenant in all those people. No, this is like the banks and their, overdraft scheme.
Yeah.
That was invented in the 90s, and now all of a sudden CEOs that invented it naming their yachts overdraft, and the American people are just being extorted and suffering.
Well, it's a really dark side, but it's a very realistic side where, okay, you have to look at it like this. The way that politics can actually work is you have to remove money out of it. If you remove
Yes,
money out of politics, you can actually have real progress. But
absolutely.
is that ever going to happen? No.
I don't know. I every couple, months I freak out and try to find a way to move out of this country because I'm so tired of it. My
But
first week.
it's just as bad. It's just as bad in other countries. That's the thing. Like America has its problems, but trust me, you go to other countries, especially in Europe, grass isn't always as green as it is on the other side.
True, but there was a time when people did not suffer this much just to get by, and yeah, like that's pretty much it. Like people are getting so desperate, they're breaking the law. They are doing crazy things like mass shootings. This is what happens when basic needs aren't met, and that's what happened with me. And like after I didn't get into the shelter, I had made a deal with my father that I would sign my kids over, because if my ex showed up and with the cops, he would have had to hand my son over. No questions asked. And I was having seizures anyway, and I really couldn't physically take care of them to where they were safe, because I was literally unconscious for however long, and you can't be like that with toddlers. And so that was like rock bottom for me. But the thing was, like, the second I signed my kids over, I lost my health insurance. So now I couldn't go to the doctor anymore. I couldn't get medicated properly. I couldn't continue dealing with all these issues I was having. And so I started self-medicating on the street even more, and drug dealers protected me. And or took advantage, like however you look at it. And, I basically got sucked into a life I never intended on. Like, I was in college before that. Like, I had plans, and, you have the carpet ripped out from under you, and you're just like trying to survive and trying to get help, and there's no help anywhere. And, eventually I also had, I eventually got a bipolar diagnosis, but that turned out to be wrong, and I'm actually high functioning autistic. So they've had me wrongfully medicated my whole life, and that's like another thing they do with mental health. They'll give you the wrong medication, it makes you suicidal, or whatever horrible side effect, and it's your fault because you have mental health issues. It's not like, I was never like that before. And
Right.
that happened to me a lot in prison. And I had one sergeant telling me to go kill myself. She couldn't wait for me to get out so I'd overdose and stop wasting taxpayers' money. Like, this is what they're doing to people. And she did the same thing to another inmate, and it was in the paper that the inmate had to be cut down from a suicide attempt. He tried hanging himself. I mean, my first week at Somerset County, I witnessed an entire pot of women get stripped out because a male sergeant wanted a list of who shaved their vaginas and who didn't. Those that did were punished. Like, that's what sex traffickers do. Like, how dare you force women to literally get naked just to see what their grooming preference is? Like, you don't have the authority to do that. And of course they get away with it. And that was just the PG stuff that went on in there. Like, I mean, I watched a woman go into labor, and the only reason they even took her to the hospital is because we all flipped out and threatened to riot. They were going to let that baby be born in a jail cell. And then they tell her, if that's a false alarm, then you're going to go into the hole for wasting our time and money. Like, and for any women out there, like, when you have a baby, like, you have false alarms, you have Braxton Hicks. Like, if you don't want to pay for people's medical bills, don't have them in jail. But your sociopath, behavior, you were literally going to let a baby be born in a jail cell. Like, this happens more often than you think. And the mother dies, the baby dies. I've watched so many women die in there from very treatable and unnecessary, reasons. And, just the level of violence, they use is crazy. And, they're doing it to the juveniles too. When they send all the parents to prison, they traffic their kids into DHS and the state and the foster systems, or send them to juvenile detention centers, and that they're getting abused in there. Predators flock to these institutions because they know the people inside they abuse will not be believed and can easily be discredited. Like, it's very toxic, it's very dangerous. And the problem is these institutions continuously allowed to be doing their own investigations. I don't care if it's a college, I don't care if it's the military, or a rehab, a mental health clinic, or a jail. These institutions should not do their own investigations. It needs to be an outside source that is completely unbiased to what their reputation is. because I mean they're destroying lives. And
Well, you know, when you look at our prison system, I remember watching a documentary several years ago that was done in Norway. They created a detention center, and it was a learning rehabilitation center. So, depending on your crime, even if you were there for a lifetime sentence, uh, each inmate was given a job. You had a different job or position. You were given a salary. Each person was given a room, and like a nicely furnished room. And I remember he was saying in there, he said, these people, either they're going to leave and be a part of society or they're not. But this is going to be their life for some point. If this is going to be their life, they should be able to have access to learning, to gain
exactly,
knowledge and grow. And truth be told, if you want to think about a progressive prison system, it shouldn't be a system. It should be a rehabilitation system.
exactly. And you can't abuse people and call it rehabilitation. Bottom line, like in the year I was at Somerset, by the end, I had no empathy for anybody. Like, I was like worried about it. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, I feel like I'm literally losing my humanity in this place. Like, these people were so awful. I mean, and it wasn't all of them. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say all the cops are bad, because, the truth is, for everyone that oppressed me and did something horrible to me, there was another risking their job trying to make it stop.
Right.
And, that's a problem within itself, too. Bad behavior gets rewarded in these places. And, it's terrible. I mean, I was also, forced to strip in front of cameras under threat and duress of being, maced, extracted. And, for all you out there, like, oh, I just say no. Well, you can do that. And then they're going to come in with a SWAT team fully, suited up, electric shock shields, batons, tasers, mace, rubber bullets, whatever they got. And they will use extreme force on you. They don't care that you're a woman. They don't care that you have, mental health issues. It does not matter to them. If they have an excuse to use violence on you, they will. And so, I was forced to strip in front of those cameras, and, I was on the wrong, medication. So I was already in, periodically in psychosis. And, when I was in there, it triggered, my PTSD from my ex, because the cell looked exactly like, my old bathroom, and he'd be like, strip, this is where you're going to die. So when they did that to me, it like put me back there. And, I had a full blown, psychotic break pretty much because of these people. And so when I went to Alderson, when I finally got to prison, I filed a PREA complaint against them, which stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act. So anything sexual of a sexual nature goes under PREA. Well, when they admitted to everything I was complaining about. And in the state of Maine, by the way, it's in the DOJ book that you cannot have cameras inside of cells, go on inmates, when they're being stripped out, going to the bathroom, any of that. It's against the law. But these people literally have cells in these in these cameras in these cells. And so when they got the response back, they deemed it unfounded. And that's how they stop it from going to a higher source. They admitted to everything, and then they just said, yep, we did it. So what? It's unfounded. And because that's how they bury it. If it doesn't go to an outside source, then they don't have to, answer to any kind of like authority. And so when Alderson got it, they wouldn't even allow me to hold it, to read it myself. They read me the results, and then they wouldn't give me a copy of it. They wouldn't let me send it home, nothing. They said, we don't do that here. And then when I got out, by the way, you only have 100 days to file a complaint when you get out of prison. And the first thing they ask for is, where's the paperwork? Did you file a complaint at the time? Where's the outcry? Where's the paper trail? Et cetera, et cetera. Well, I did, but they wouldn't give it to me. I went to the Freedom of Information Act. They couldn't find this complaint. And then it came out in the papers that Captain Grimes at Alderson and 4 of his subordinates all got convicted of raping and stalking inmates and tampering with PREA evidence. So I wasn't even the only one they did it to, and I was far from their worst victim. And, this is what's happening. They're covering for each other. They're just plain up not giving up the paperwork. So when I got out, I tried to get the paperwork. And actually I let it go. And then it was in the paper that, the sergeant had gotten that kid to kill himself, and that the jail was refusing to hand over officer disciplinary records to the media, which is illegal. And then when they finally
The
did,
freedom of press.
right. And so when they finally did, all of the officer disciplinary records, they'd say suspended for 5 days, but they wouldn't say what the officer did. So that's how they were like keeping everybody clean. They just weren't, doing the paperwork properly. That's corruption. If someone, gets written up or, has a disciplinary action, it should be on record of what it is, especially with law enforcement. And so they told me to get a lawyer and, have it subpoenaed, but you can't subpoena anything without an open case, and you can't open a case without paperwork.
Paperwork, right.
Yeah. And they also said they had already given it to me, and the lawyer was like, that doesn't matter. By law, they have to give it to you. The thing is, there's no consequence if they don't. So this is one of the bills that I'm pushing for now, that if, there has to be a consequence, for every day that they stonewall an inmate on their paperwork, because this is how they're getting away with, horrible things in there. And they're doing it to kids. They're doing it to the elderly. They're doing it to the innocent. Like, it's not just women in prison. There's a lot more factors to this. And, this is why I'm pushing for this.
Do you know what this reminds me of? I don't know if anybody out there knows this. Another Kennedy is running for presidency. But yeah, but I think he's Robbie Kennedy's kid. I forgot what his first name is. But it's crazy to think. Imagine if we had another Kennedy in office. I know this is going to
crazy.
I know this is going to sound insane, but I feel like there would absolutely be a lot of change. Look at what what JFK did in the matter of like a few years he was around. He changed a lot of things.
Yeah, and he got killed for it.
Yeah, he did. He wanted to change a lot of the things that you're talking about too. Like his family is I've heard the Kennedys, like you can watch them. What's his name? Not Joseph Kennedy. Oh my God, he was on the JRE podcast. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about the shift in Americans' perspective because of the internet and the advancement of social media. Like, can I be honest with you? The fact I'm able to talk with somebody like you and you're able to share the story to me, this is what I work for. Like, this is only possible because the internet and social media allows us to do this. And you don't need CNN. You don't need Fox News to tell your story.
Right.
There's no barriers that's holding you back. Like they say paperwork, but the thing is, you can go over that.
Well, I'm trying to. I am trying to. I had the governor of Maine kind of breathing down their necks. But we did manage to get a bill passed in Maine mandating all jails provide feminine hygiene products, both tampons and pads, free of charge for women. And yes, that's a problem. They will literally, women will literally make their own tampons in there because they're desperate and get infections and get sick. Like, they get over $100 a day for us. They can afford to give us, sanitary, hygiene products. And then the only way you can get tampons, instead of these crappy pads that you have to wear like 4 of them just to get any protection at all. Yeah. You can buy them on commissary, but they jack the price up, like triple what they are out here. And, again, you work for pennies a day. You work 40 hours a week for $5.25. And if you don't, you go to the shoe and you lose your good time. Yeah. Oh, here's another scam they have for the American taxpayers in federal prison. So when you arrive at federal prison, if you don't have your high school diploma or GED, they make you take the GED. That's great. If you don't have anything, But what was happening is they were getting $2,000, for every inmate that was going in, and another $2,000 for when they graduated. So inmates have no way of getting any records. You can't look stuff up. You don't have the internet. You don't have phone books. I mean, you can have people do it for you on the outside, but not everybody has that option. And So they make you get your high school transcripts, even though it's in your PSI, pre-sentencing investigation, your entire work history, your entire, high school, your level of education,
Right.
everything. So there were women with doctor's degrees, PhDs, and levels way higher than a GED, and they were being forced to take the GED in there because the prison was getting, free money for it, free funding for it, basically. So, and then they cut quarters again and have the inmates that, have had higher educations teach the inmates who actually needed the GED instead of paying for teachers.
Wow. I'm just you're just blown away. It's crazy because my father was an immigrant that came to this country legally, might I add,
Yeah.
and got his papers. And I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, so many people try to do what they can not to break the laws, you know, um, follow the societal norms, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just tired. I'm just
Me too.
tired and fed up that we can't live our lives in peace. It's like sickness or illness or doing something wrong in your life. You know, for Christ's sakes, somebody goes ahead and sells a bag of marijuana, okay, and gets caught. And because they get caught, because let's just say they're in the state of Alabama. I'm going to give Alabama as an example. Okay, they're going to get thrown in prison for 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and get treated just the way that you're talking about, and all that shit for fucking 15 years.
And as a white woman, I was very blessed to get 37 months. If I had been a black or brown woman, that would have been, double, triple that. And that doesn't sit right with me. And, when I was in prison, I met, a handful of Spanish women, or not all Spanish women, but every single one of them was a woman of color who had been sterilized against her will.
Yeah, you
This
you
is
you mentioned. I'm very curious about this.
Texas is known for that.
Why do they sterilize them?
Because it's genocide.
They don't want them to procreate.
No, they are still committing genocide against these communities. I mean, look what the Native Americans, they're trying to overturn, them having the rights to protect the rights to keep their children, because white people used to throw them in, residential schools and, adopt them to white Christian families and stuff like that. They want to be able to start that pipeline of, Native children again. That's what
Well,
they're trying to do,
well,
or
thank
they're just trying to, exterminate them and not, so they don't have the ability to have babies, and the only
yeah,
white lives. That's what that lady said, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Like, come on, like that's
I know.
crazy, and it's just, it's just crazy to me. Like when I was in the South, like the racism was so bad with the cops. Like just the tone of voice they would use with black inmates compared to how they talked to me was like it was like night and day. And, they had no shame down there. Like I had no idea what a coon dog was before I went to prison. And one of the staff in the kitchen, there was a stray dog that came in, and one of the black girls in my unit was feeding this dog. And this guy comes out and goes, "Oh, the last thing I ever thought I'd see is you feeding that coon dog." Like, those are the dogs that the slave masters used to like sick on runaway slaves to like tear them apart. And, and you're going to say that to a black inmate and she can't do anything about it because you're a white man that works at a prison. Like it was disgusting. Like, I mean, the levels of, racism,
I,
and it
I
was just disgusting what I saw down there.
it's crazy because I was privileged to be able to speak with three Native American tribes. I sat down with the Sac and Fox Nation, and they're out in Oklahoma. Um, this man is just absolutely incredible. Like with his family and his tribe, they've been really trying to rebuild with his family. His family's been through hell, like serious hell, and they've been moved around like nobody's business. But the beautiful thing about what I see with it now is Native American tribes are really pushing themselves out. They now have websites. They
They
have,
should.
yeah,
They
they
have,
do.
I'm all for it. Like up in Maine a couple years back. So there was this there's this company where they build boats and steam stuff, whatever. They had a replica of one of the Pilgrim boats, and they were one of the Republican candidates wanted to have the replica of Columbus's boat come down, the Penobscot River, sacred waters to, the natives. Columbus never even came down the Penobscot River. So they were pushing for this. Oh, it's history. It's history. No, it's not, because he never came here. Like, and you want to re-traumatize this group of people who has fought so hard to, get, come back from genocide. And they didn't teach us, and they taught us that, oh, there was a bad deal, with the natives and they got screwed over with some land. No, they didn't teach us that there were massacre sites in Maine where they just showed up and slaughtered these tribes.
You're gonna
They
love
didn't tell us that in school.
you're gonna love this. I was down in
Oh,
D.
hold on. Sorry,
Sure.
this is the best part. So they brought this other
Yeah.
prize boat right afterwards, and there was this huge freak accident and a gust of wind, and the boat sank. And I'm like, that's them ancestors coming through, saying screw you, and having the Columbus replica even come here in Maine. Like,
Whoa.
it was just like
Instant
perfect.
karma.
Like, yes, it was great. I was like rooting
Beautiful.
for it
I
the whole way.
love that. I love that. No, it just reminded me. A few weeks ago, I was in DR. I was in Dominican Republic,
Oh, I love the
and
DR.
oh my god, it's
I
beautiful.
haven't been there since a kid.
I went to Santo Domingo, and the few of the friends of mine, actually one of my neighbors, he was staying in the old town, like where the settlers, like the first ones that came, and they have like these statues and things. And I remember one of my neighbors, also her name is Wanda. We were sitting there in the court area, and I said to her, "Isn't it crazy how these people celebrate these people like Christopher Columbus, but they came to Dominican Republic and spread disease and slaughtered but
Yeah,
85% of the population. So most
and
of the indigenous tribes are gone because of it."
that, and like they documented like that he had bestiality issues with like manatees on shore. Dude, he got disgraced by I think Spain. Like they completely like disgraced him by the end. So I don't even know why he's continuously celebrated. Like he was found as like a horrible person back then. Like, and now he gets
No kidding.
credit for discovering America. It was already, people were already here. Like you didn't discover anything.
And it's
I
funny.
mean,
It's funny because here's the thing about culture. When you go around the world, when you go to Asia, go to Africa, go to Europe, you go to the Americas, South and North America, you see this just diverse of people that grew up in their lands, adapted, and over time it just became a part of their just daily norms. And that's the thing I love about experience different cultures, because you just realize the narrative that we have been told since I was a kid. Let me say
yeah,
it louder. It's bullshit.
it's total bullshit. So yeah, you know how they're like banning books now and everything? Okay, so
Really?
this is my first experience with a banned book. I was in prison, and this girl tried to order some of the banned books of the Bible, like Book of Enoch, Gospel of Judas, Apocalypse of Adam, Book of Mary Magdalene, anything. I didn't know what banned books were. I didn't even know there were banned books of the Bible. Like, for instance, anything written by a woman is automatic blasphemy. But
Of
there's also
course. Yeah,
this
right.
other half of the story that the church doesn't want you to know, because it completely, blows their power away and it gives it back to the people. But that's not what they want. And so this girl couldn't have, they told her she couldn't have those books or order them. They were on the banned list. So naturally, like when I got out, being naturally oppositionally defiant, I had to read them. And I highly recommend that everybody go do that, because, Christ had a lot more to say. Did you know he could like change, like he was a shapeshifter? His favorite form to change into was a black dog.
Interesting. Well, okay, so here's something that you probably don't know, and I didn't say this. I was raised raised Jewish, so I was raised in a religious home. And the funny thing is, in Judaism, especially in these religious communities, not in the religion itself, but in these communities, women are considered less than men. Like one
Yes,
hundred
it's the
percent.
patriarchal system that they
Yeah.
want to enforce on us. Like
What?
the men want us to serve them and submit to them. And now, like with what's women don't need men anymore. We can have our own banking accounts. We can buy our own property. We can work if we want to. We don't have to have a man to survive because society oppresses us to that degree anymore. And now all these men realize they actually have to work for it and make us genuinely like them instead of just be dependent on them. And a lot of them can't handle it.
No, they can't. Well, because thing is, they don't want to.
Right. They would rather just have, women. They think that's women's place, that we are literally less than.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like I've been single for about 5 years. Um, I just feel that, especially like now, and especially like what you've been talking about, like your experience you're going through, you have to like ask yourself a question: Do I need to have this relationship, or are we just doing this because we want to like check off the marriage slot? You know
Right.
what I
And
mean?
it's like indoctrination. Like, get married, have kids, both work. Yeah, the only reason they even decided women could work in the first place is because, oh, women can pay taxes also and buy more stuff and we can make more money off of them. And on top of the fact it's not 50-50, because women are still expected to do all the housework, take care of all the kids, do all that end work, and do all this stuff. And for what? That's why there's this whole new energy that women just being like, dude, we're better off single. And then there's this whole group of men who are really angry about it, and it's yeah, there's some really bad rape culture going on right now. And it's not even all the men, it's the women upholding it too.
Oh,
I'm
well,
not gonna be the trustee of the block in this patriarchal prison. Like, I'm good. Like, y'all can have that.
it's just a lot of trauma. I've said this before. People that before the pandemic were already at the cliff, and now that the pandemic is over, these people are all over. They've all over the cliff. They're down the canyon, all the way at the bottom.
Right.
And what we're left with is now a reality of just absurd insanity.
Yeah.
The way that we're going to allow things to change is for people to see it. They have to
I
see it.
mean, the breaking point for me when I finally got better was because Janet Mills took over from Paula Page, and she expanded main care. And I was able to get, health insurance. I was able to get trauma therapy. I was able to get MAT treatment when I needed. Then I went off of it, and I was able to do all of these things and get myself to a good, healthy place and stay sober. That was it. When I got out on probation, I had $1,300 of medication, psych meds, that the prison had me on, that I was now chemically and physically addicted to, because that's what psych meds do, just like Xanax and opioids and everything else.
You
They
can't
get
do.
you get
You can't
physically
go.
addicted to them too. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out, when you're talking about psych meds, you're talking about like
Um,
you can't just go off of them.
no, your heart can stop on lithium if you just
Okay.
stop taking it. Yeah,
All right. Right.
it's very, very dangerous. So when I got out of prison, I had no way to pay for this. So now I was spacing these meds out. On top of the fact I had the shock of getting back out in society, I literally had a panic attack every time I left my house. And, I couldn't take it. And I literally just relapsed and, ended up taking a full rev going back. And, the prosecutor said that my PTSD was so bad, I would never get sober. And, now here I am 5 years later, and I have a brand. I'm coming, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to all kinds of people, I'm getting bills passed. Like, he was like, I've had so many people like bang on the fact that I was probably gonna die on drugs. And it's like, dude, if you just give people basic empathy and just a basic chance, it doesn't have to be that way. Their kids don't have to be orphaned. They don't have to spend years in jail. There is a way,
Right.
a different way. This is a medical problem, not, a morality problem. It literally rewires your brain to make that substance more vital than water. Like you're literally insane at that point.
Well,
Like,
because
yeah,
well, it's because we don't have health care in this country. We have sick care because of how it's designed and how it's structured. No one can ever really be able to properly afford care. You know what? I'm going to say this from my job. I get Aetna. Okay, I get Aetna. I pay not a lot of money for it. Do you think that my bills are cheap when it comes to my medical expenses? Oh my god, are you kidding me? I've spent alone probably $400 or $500 out of my pocket just for
that's
my medical
crazy.
expenses. Yeah,
Yeah. I was in prison with a 78-year-old little old lady. They gave her 18 months because she needed knee surgery. She was just trying to walk, and her insurance wouldn't cover it because she was married. Her husband was a veteran. So she lied on the form and said she was single. They blew her doors off the hinges, SWAT team and everything, scared her to death. She'd never broken a law in her life. And they smoked her 18 months in federal prison for medical fraud. She was just trying to walk. So, when the Republicans talk about, oh, the raid and, Trump got raided. Oh my God. Cry me a river. They knocked. I know little old ladies who have had way worse than that man, like when it comes to due process. So, please don't cry about spilled milk to me. And Marjorie Gray Taylor, talking about the January 6th terrorists, they didn't have a haircut and blah, blah, blah. We didn't have water at Danbury for 3 days during the hottest days of the year. And it happens every year. Like, they built an $80 billion brand new facility down the hill that could only hold another 60 inmates. Meanwhile, up in Danbury, there's an inch thick of black mold in the showers. That's what people are breathing in. The health issues, and the way they doctor these buildings up, when there is an inspection from an outside authority, they do everything to cover up all the stuff they don't want them
of
to
course
see.
they do. Well, it's funny because one of the biggest issues that nobody talks about is a lot of people that have mental health issues. They used to go to what they used to call insane asylums. They don't go there anymore because they don't no longer
No,
exist.
you go to jail.
Reagan basically shut all of that down. So
And they
okay,
were horrible.
they were horrible. Don't get me wrong; they were absolutely awful. But now you have people that are mentally ill
Yeah,
with people that, like you said, this woman that's in prison for 18 months because she put on a paper that she was single and she wasn't. So now she's
right.
exposed to people that are schizophrenic, they're
Yeah.
mentally unstable. Like, how crazy is that?
And this is what they do when inmates try to get help. There was this one girl who was having a serious mental health crisis. She goes to the mental health building and goes, please, I need help. Like, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm going to do something crazy. Like, please, like, you just need to, like, put me somewhere. Like, I'm going to do something stupid. Please help me. They threatened her with a write-up and a shot if she didn't leave because she wasn't on the call out. She was in crisis and being proactive about her mental health. Well, it all came as a huge surprise when, they figured out that she walked off the compound and escaped. And then they made themselves look really, really bad with the BOP and the marshals because they lost one of their inmates. Well, what do you think happens? People are, this is called rehabilitation, and someone is actively trying to rehabilitate themselves and beg for help, and you threaten them, with good time loss and everything else.
Right.
The other thing was, my friend, she was put on this medication and it would make her so, and by the way, when they give you your night meds in the feds, it's at 5 o'clock at night. Or, actually it's between, the latest you can take it is like 5 o'clock or 4. I can't remember. It's 4 or 5, like right before dinner. And, so when people take their meds like trazodone or the stuff that really messes you up, they're taking it at this time when they should be taking it hours later. She would get a shot every time she took her medication because she was so messed up she didn't know what she was doing. So then when she wouldn't take it, she'd be fine. Then they tried gaslighting her and saying, well, you haven't been taking it every day, so this is your fault. This is why the medication isn't working. She goes, every time I take it, I get a shot. I don't want to get a shot every day. Like, I'm like, this isn't working. And, that then when she wouldn't take it, they'd write her up. They'd say refusal medication, whatever. Not like they have all these ways of messing with you, with your medication. Like, and that's a problem. Like, if you're honest about your mental health, it will get weaponized against you in a
Right.
lot of these situations.
It's really horrible to even think about that these are grown individuals that have to deal with these experiences every single day. Let me ask you something though. You, now that you've been out of prison and you've been able to build yourself your life, I know that you have a clothing brand. Is that
Yes,
one of
I
those
do.
things? Is that like one of those things that you did when you got out of prison to be able to support yourself?
Um, well, no, it didn't. I cleaned house. I would contract my own cleaning jobs
Ooh.
and, do that. I worked at a couple hotels too, but,
So you
my
kind of hustled your way
PTSD was,
through.
yeah, my PTSD was really bad. So I had to be careful, like what, situations I put myself in. And, um, yeah, so I ended up finding this company called the Galleries, and they're this Canadian company, and they take artists and they'll give you your own platform, and you can choose your own name and everything else, and you can turn your art into this environmentally beautiful women's clothing brand. I got some stuff to show you. It
Ooh.
also comes in plus sizes, and so it's very inclusive. And like the thing I was so happy about this when I ordered it, like the shirts and the dresses, like everything. In America, we as women, we have skinniness shoved down our throats, to the point where it's this really toxic, you know, vain culture. And, a lot of these brands will size their clothes really, really small,
Well, also
like
there's something
way too
to
small.
okay, so there's also something to take in mind, and I know this because I've been around a lot of beautiful people, like Latin girls. I had a friend of mine that's Puerto Rican, uh, and she used to tell me that her biggest problem was because she has very wide hips. She's very wide hips, so she always has like
Yeah,
really big pants to for it to fit. And I'm like,
right. And it makes people feel bad and it gives them body
exactly,
dysmorphia issues. And it's terrible. And this brand does not do that. Like when I ordered a small, it was actually a little bit big. And, there's not a single body type that would not look flattering in these clothes. And, that's why I'm so happy about it because, everybody could find something, that would make them feel empowering and stunning and all the things that this, patriarchal society tells, women or, maybe not necessarily even women, trans women, everything, anybody that embodies the divine feminine. It tells us we are less than. It breaks us down to, subservience and, at the mercy of men. And a lot of men are pretty awful to women.
well, I hope I'm not one of them,
No,
but
you don't seem like that at all. Like you seem to call out the bullshit nicely. So we need
thank
more
you.
people like that because
Well,
they're not going to
try.
listen to us. They're going to listen to other men, calling them out. Like, dude, you're being a misogynistic piece of work. Like, that's what it takes.
Let me ask you, like the is like, do you draw these pieces?
I paint them with acrylic on canvas, and then I,
Wow.
take a picture, and then I pick out which type of clothing or dress or whatever I want to put it on, and then I send it to them, and then they send me what the pictures look like, and then and for stores, if there are any boutiques or stores or anything that wants to carry this, I do host wholesale, and I would love for you to carry my brand. So it's
Yes.
quite different from the norm. Like we got placemats and I got pillowcases. I got
Ooh,
all kinds of stuff. One day I'll be like super gothic, and then the next day,
I love that.
it'll be like, yeah, see, like
I
super
feel
gothic,
I feel
and then
you
the
on
next day it'll
that.
be like butterflies and rainbows and everything else. Like I just kind of go all over the place.
Well, I'm like that with my music. I have a record collection. So some days I feel like Marvin Gaye, other days I feel like
Right.
Ramones, and then I'll have the days where I just like want, don't judge me, I want the monkeys. I just want the monkeys. I just
Hey,
need
man, that's cool, man. Like I'm a big
Beatles
metal chick. Like
knockoff.
I left prison with matching Slipknot luggage, so
I love that. I love everything about that. If you ever would make an album, like just a music album, like just the picture of you leaving with that, that's just
yeah.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
So it's funny because we rescue this pit bull who was, bad shape, had maggots coming out, and like all I kept thinking, like to deal with it, like I kept telling myself, maggots are good, maggots are good. That this like eats the infection and all that other stuff, and maggots are good. And it brought me back to Slipknot because they call their fans maggots.
God. Yeah,
I was like,
band.
I think this is the only way I'm processing this.
Yeah,
Because I
there
know they're good, but oh my god, I'm not mentally stable enough to deal with them. Like ugh.
yeah, people forget like what it was to go to a concert like 20 or 30 years ago. It was a little different than it is now. Could you
Yeah,
you
I
could
still love it though. I still love it. Although
I love
last
it.
time at the Bangor, auditorium, this lady, at security, I had this leather bracelet and it had these like metal studs in it. She took it from me. She told me I wouldn't be able to get in without it. And then the girl behind me had a chain with like a padlock on it, and then she let her in. So she was just targeting like certain people for certain, which I'm not
Well,
going
you
to
know
get
what?
into,
Like
but
somebody should just
like,
like put like a sledgehammer like around their neck and be like, "That's the new piece, okay? Like,
right,
sir, you can't bring that in here. No, it's a necklace."
right.
I love that. Well, it's really great that you were able to find art. I mean, do you use it as a form of meditation?
Yes, there was a style of art. My mother would send me books when I was in jail, like, and it would really help, like, with the PTSD flashbacks and the coping mechanism. It's called Zen Tangle, and it's basically like meditative art. So what I'm doing, I'm writing a book, and it's almost
Oh
done editing.
wow.
So I will have that
Nice.
published soon. But I'm also making an adult coloring book with this Zen Tangle style of like meditative art, and I'm going to include like what I learned about trauma that helped me deal with it, and different coping mechanisms, because mental health is just a crisis right now, and half the people, psychologists, they don't know what it's like, and their PhD made them so arrogant they don't want to listen to people. Like if these doctors had just listened to me years ago, you know, I wouldn't have, struggled for so long, but they kept being like, no, you got to take this med, you got to take this med. Like, turns out I'm, high functioning autistic, and no med is going to fix me. Like, my brain just processes things faster, and I have sensory issues, and I look at the world different, and you know what, that's okay. Like, you don't have to try and fix me. Like, I am fine just the way that I am. I am not broken or defective because I was made this way. In fact, where I will struggle with a lot of things that are really easy for other people, but then I'm gonna shine and create something that not very many people can, because I
Right.
am different. I'm gonna
Well,
have different ideas, and like, this is why I'm so sick of this, like, box they want to fit everybody in. Like, this is
right.
supposed to be a melting pot of different personalities and different
Cultures. I'll tell you something. For myself, I have ADHD, I have dyslexia, and I have a speech impairment. And I have figured out and managed how to survive in this world
Mhm.
all by myself, because I was never taught on how to be able to deal with this. I was always taught, "Oh, you need to take a pill. Oh, you need tons of
Right.
therapy. Oh, there's something wrong with you. Oh, you're not, well, why do you think this way?" Well, here's the thing. My mind processes things the way that it does and does the things that it does because
What it
that's just
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there are many people like us.
Yeah.
The problem is the fear of, because I feel like,
Us realizing how powerful we actually are.
yeah, we can do a lot of good in a very short amount of time.
And we can burn shit down in a motherfucking
Oh
instant.
yeah. Like fucking Burning Man 2017 wasn't there, but I heard it was really good.
I've always wanted to go to that.
I wanted to, but
Maybe because maybe since I'm like out west now, like yeah, maybe I can.
so you were talking about like with Zentangle and this art form. Um, when did you make these? Like, when did you make these paintings?
Well, like this is one of the last paintings I did. But like in jail, you couldn't have paint, so we just had like pens. So I would draw it, and you can do affirmations with them as well. And like really, I learned tips for people with mental health issues. You can rewire your brain if you want to. Like when I quit smoking, every time I smoked a cigarette, I'd say I hate cigarettes. I hate cigarettes. It's so disgusting. Like I hate this. And then at night when I was going to sleep, I'd say I quit smoking. I quit smoking, and I would just like rewire that into my subconscious. And eventually, every time I smoked a cigarette, I hated it more and more till eventually one day I literally just stopped. And I also found binaural beats very helpful. Like you play them while you're sleeping, and it's like sound frequency healing. And they're free on YouTube. Like you just look them up. Like you can look meditations up too. But the ASMR, that makes you feel like you're getting a massage just from like certain sounds. I mean, those really help. With when you're dealing with like manic episodes or trying to distract yourself.
Right. I mean, the best. The thing is, people don't realize is this: our brains are connected through neurons. You have these neural pathways, basically, kind of think of them as spider webs that kind of shoot out in different directions, and they need to be able to attach to something. The thing about replication, so repeating pattern, I know this because I like to I like watching science. Um, is you sometimes will have those neurons that they keep on sprouting out, and they will either just attach and they'll just keep on doing the same pattern over and over again. So you basically have to reroute it. Basically, have to
Right.
reroute the way your brain is thinking, and it's like that sounds great, but like, how the fuck do you do that? Yeah,
It's just,
it's crazy. Yeah,
21 day. If you do something for 21 days in a row, it's considered a habit.
really.
Yes.
21 days.
So, yes, by, doing the same thing over and over again, like you can change, the way your brain reacts to things. And honestly, when I got out, I had to smoke weed because it slowed me down enough to where I could like stop and, process it and not just react and, go crazy and go into fight mode. And, the feds will never legalize weed because their entire sentencing system is revolves around weed. Like they convert all drugs into marijuana. Like 1 gram of cocaine equals 200 grams of marijuana. Like it's the stupidest system, and it's designed to keep people locked up for a very long time. Not to mention all the people in prison for ghost weight. Like, and what ghost weight is basically someone says they sold me 3 ounces a week for 5 months. So they never caught. They never, there was never any proof. It was just somebody's story who is likely facing a lot of time. And like when they had a snitch testify against me, they literally held up a picture of me and said, tell us about Elizabeth Mikotowicz selling this, this, and this. Like now that you've set them up to like what you want them to say, like this is how they're doing it. And I remember when Paula Page, our former governor of Maine, got up on the news and was talking about how out-of-state thugs from the hood were coming up to Maine, flooding our streets with drugs and impregnating our white women. Like, dude, I was a drug dealer in Maine. I saw how those things happen. And you mean to tell me these inner city kids who are more likely to like go to foster care, join a gang or get killed before they even like graduate high school are going to know they can quadruple their money way up in Maine? No, the truth is you have white CIs from Maine and white drug addicts going down to the hoods and getting these people and bringing them back up here. Because now you have this steady supply of drug dealers crossing state lines and going into your prisons. Like this is full-blown entrapment.
I do
And
believe this. I do believe this, that in the coming of years, whether it be 10 or 20 years, all drugs will be illegal here in this country. I
oh
know
yeah,
it 100%. Because
probably.
I don't know if you know this, MDMA, we are 1 year away from MDMA being FDA approved. How fucking crazy is that? 1 year away.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. We're very close to that point. And here's the thing: once we get to that point where drugs are all legal, look, it's not going to be a pretty picture. I'm not going to lie to you. It's gonna be bad for a little bit, but you'll see they're gonna be forced to having to change the prison system because they're
Yeah.
gonna have no other choice. They're like, this is no longer sustainable.
Right. Well, now they're going after like a lot of white collar people because they realize, they can extort white collar criminals for way more, like their assets, their houses, their offshore bank accounts. Drug dealers really aren't that as lucrative. So now
No,
they're kind of switching it up and going after people, for that. And and now the other thing is they're going after people for helping women get abortions and all that stuff, and that's just a way to lock black women up for having miscarriages. That's all that is, and they're already doing that.
right? It's a never ending pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like
again,
you,
I said this from the beginning. A lot of these issues will be solved once this war of drugs is over. Because if you look at history, once the war of drugs was made, this is where a lot of these problems became even worse and swelled up to where they are now. And
so
yeah, I'm sorry.
this kid in our federal drug therapy class, he was super smart and like super philosopher like, and he goes, so since it's a war on drugs, does that make us prisoners of war?
Technically, yes. It's very twisted and really fucked up, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
crazy.
oh, here's another thing. Doctors that are in prison doctors are allowed to have their license lost. Like 60% of prison doctors in Alabama have malpractice suits and lost their medical license from like they're still allowed to work at prisons and they're still allowed to work at native clinics, like on reservations. And growing up, in white communities, you hear about native reservations, and a reservation for a white person is like to a fancy restaurant or a hotel or, something, kind of special.
It's
And,
exotic.
yes. And so when you think of native reservation, oh, it must be so nice that, they have their log cabins and they're out in, in the nature. They don't tell you that a lot of them don't even have running water.
Well, there's some tribes like the Cherokee Nation. They this is really crazy. The Cherokee Nation created one of the very first Native American healthcare systems in their territories, and I had somebody that came on and she was explaining it. It's really great. They have this like awesome care where everything is standard rates. Everything's standard rates. So can you imagine this? Can you imagine that they can go to a native hospital and it's a standard rate from the ambulance to the hospital itself?
That's crazy. Can you hold on 1 minute?
Sure.
The dog that got
Yes. Give me a
injured
sec.
is crying.
We'll be right back. So, yeah, I mean, like, that's just kind of like my overall take on it. Where if you have these tribes, such as like the Cherokee Nation, that is able to offer this care at an affordable rate, they're doing better than we are on the other side.
I mean, yeah, but that's like one tribe. There are other tribes that don't even have
Right.
running
Of
water, let
course.
alone health
Right, right.
clinics,
Right.
and they've been forced into poverty. And I'm not okay with certain populations, being forced into poverty. Like I don't like that. This is not what this country should stand on.
Right. What would be like one thing you'd want to leave off? Something that like you hold true to yourself that you want people to know about?
Um, I don't know. I kind of look at my life like it was like a piece of pottery that got smashed, and I'm like trying to build this beautiful mosaic out of the pieces. Like it doesn't have to just be lost because you lost your way or because you had a bad go of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just clearing your path for something better. And I think if like I did go through a lot of shit that still bothers me and still gets to me, and still really affects me. But I think if I can change it for other people, then it will have been worth it.
I mean, it's beautiful. It's a really great outlook, and it's a really great way to be genuine, honestly. It's kind of something that we miss a lot of the times, is being true to ourselves, not always painting a picture just because we want other people
Right.
to see something else.
No, I'm like I'm I would rather like be completely open and honest and be like, yeah, I have this diagnosis, or yeah, I've been to prison, because people will treat you a different way. And then you can see them for who they really are. Then not to trust them. Then they're gonna think they're above you, or they're gonna think they can extort you. Like, they think if you tell them you have a mental, like, this is with a lot of men, the second you tell them you have a head injury, or you have a diagnosis, they will treat you like you're stupid. And then they get sloppy with their shitty behavior, and then you can spot it sooner. Like, I don't, because at the end of the day, like, I don't care. I don't care what,
Right.
I've already been dragged through the mud. Like, I don't really care. Like, there's a whole bunch of people on this planet. I don't need to be around you, like, if you're a certain type of way.
Right. Let me ask you something. If somebody wants to find you, where can they find you on your socials?
My socials are the same on TikTok and Instagram. It's EPM underscore art underscore 1111.
Okay. Perfect.
And my website, it's legalleries.com/en/Elizabeth.Mikotowicz.
It's really cool. I went over there. She has really cool pieces and artwork. Oh my god, it's just amazing. And if
I
you
also do custom pieces for people. Like, if you guys want portraits, or something personal, or I love doing nursery sets for babies. I love that. So you can hit me up, and I'll commission something for you.
it's amazing. Be sure to check it out.
Oh,
And
business logos. Y'all need business logos. I got you too.
oh my god. Oh, it's the worst designing logos.
Yeah, it is, but
It is what it is.
Right.
But if you like what you like, be sure to like and subscribe. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Stay groovy, my friends. Bye, everybody.